guys, so I decided to go ahead and put on the new Reese, I don't know if it's new, but the rear badge that lights up. Now you got to take this old badge off, this emblem. You're going to need a couple tools to do that. Use some nylon pry tools so you don't booger up your paint and do all that. Now, I'm not going to lie, I already removed this thing, but it's a bitch. It is really tough to get off there because they put a lot of adhesive 3M tape on the back. You're going to start with your corners here. Get you one that's long and thin, not thick. You can see the height difference there. Start prying in this corner and lift up. And then get one like this that's just a straight edge, so you can start to push down in there from the sides to get and start breaking up that 3M tape in the back. What you don't want to do is ruin this emblem because it's probably really expensive to buy a new one. Not to mention the Reese version that I'm putting on, I don't think is the quality that this is. So my assumption is it's probably going to fade in a year and a half, and I may have to go back to this emblem. Not to mention, it's still a cool emblem, put up in the garage, add to your signs. So again, you're going to get into these corners here, and you're just going to start prying this and then rocking this down. Now you may not want to start to the top because you have the slope, but if I were to start here on the side and start to get a little piece out, then I can start prying in this piece here to break up that tape. And then when I start to get it off a little more, I can come in here and do this. Now the goal is not to use those tools as much as you have to preserve your paint. So when you get a nice corner up, start using your fingers and apply pressure. Don't bend this in the process, but just apply a decent amount of pressure coming towards you away from the vehicle, and then you can just keep sliding this tool in and breaking that tape up, and you'll start to pull it off and see it. And when it comes off, even though I took this off once already, put it back on just for demo purposes, you can see it's still tough to get off. They put tape on all of these surfaces, so that way you know this thing didn't come off. Seems like metal, could be plastic, chrome plastic, not sure. But you're going to be left with all this residual type of stuff here. I don't recommend using a tool. I just recommend taking the old fingers and going at it and pulling this up one little bit at a time. It'll come up, because you don't want to damage the paint underneath here, because you could get leaking around there, and if you did a nice scratch on that paint job, you could be getting a bunch of rust there that you don't even know you have. So, but you can see that entire emblem was covered with this 3M tape. It's thick, it's sticky, and Dodge definitely did not want that emblem coming off. So that's what I'm going to be doing next, is getting all of this adhesive off. Now, getting any old 3M adhesive off of any body, the body of a vehicle after an emblem has been removed is always a pain in the neck, pain in the ass. One thing that I found on this one that's working rather well is that I just take my finger and I lift up this sheet and I slide this piece underneath here and then just kind of pull it up a little bit at a time, not breaking through the 3M, but allowing it to slowly release from the vehicle. And that's allowing me to take this off in full strips to where I'm not going to be fighting individual little tiny pieces, having to use my fingernails and things like that. So again, just get you a nice thick nylon pry bar and just go underneath it a little bit, just rocking back and forth ever so gently, just to pull it a little bit to pull away from the vehicle, and it'll come off in nice big strips for you. So just a tidbit of information there to help. So give you a comparison of the one that I'm going with. This is the Reese version. It is chrome. I'm not wanting to black out everything on this truck because I think it's got enough black on it, being a black body, and I like some chrome on it to have a little bit of to break it up a little bit. So I got the chrome version of this, and you can see the difference in what came off. It is a little thicker, so it's going to stick out a little more to accommodate probably for the lights. The emblem itself, the ram looks pretty close. It's a little thicker on this. Again, it's got to accommodate for the lights, if this was the original didn't have to. But you can see it's not a perfect chrome. So when I put it on there, it'll be far enough away from everything that I won't see a problem with it or anything like that. But that's what the black and the chrome version looks like. Everybody's done the blackout version. Nobody did anything with the chrome version, so I really couldn't see this in action. I think I spotted a video out on Car ID or somewhere that I got this, and I was able to see the chrome, but never lit up. So this will be a new one for anybody that wants to retain the chrome look on their vehicle without blacking out everything that they own. So we'll get to this tape get it mounted up and see what we got here. Now, getting any old 3M adhesive off of any body, the body of a vehicle after an emblem has been removed is always a pain in the neck, pain in the ass. One thing that I found on this one that's working rather well is that I just take my finger and I lift up this sheet and I slide this piece underneath here and then just kind of pull it up a little bit at a time, not breaking through the 3M, but allowing it to slowly release from the vehicle. And that's allowing me to take this off in full strips to where I'm not going to be fighting individual little tiny pieces, having to use my fingernails and things like that. So again, just get you a nice thick nylon pry bar and just go underneath it a little bit, just rocking back and forth ever so gently, just to pull it a little bit to pull away from the vehicle, and it'll come off in nice big strips for you. All right, as I said, if you take your time and you use a nice type of nylon pry bar, you can get a lot of that 3M tape up in solid pieces. May seem to take a little longer than people just wanting to rip it off and rip it out of place, but quite honestly, it saves you a ton of time when it comes to cleaning this up. The pieces you see up here on the left, that's where I had to get my pry bar in. So what I did is separated the foam in between both sticky sides, and that's why that's there. But as you can see, that left probably, I don't know, 97, 98% of that badge, that hole where that badge was, pretty clean, and it'll be a lot less for me to have to clean up later down the road. So I just wanted to show you that again, if you take your time, you use the right pry tool, that you can get those up in solid pieces, and it'll come off and just leave you with a much cleaner result down the road and save you some time and cleanup work. All right, so as you can see, I got all the 3M tape off of that emblem area where it's going to go, and it's clean. Now, you see swirl marks, things like that, because this truck wasn't washed. It's trailing end of winter here. But I went ahead and cleaned it up with alcohol and got it real clean and with no debris on there. Now, alcohol does leave some residual behind, so you want to take a cloth and behind the alcohol and make sure you get all that off of that surface, because you want that to be 100% clean when you go to put the other 3M tape emblem back on. The most important thing is you don't want to leave any of the 3M tape behind from the original emblem. If you leave it, say for example, down here on one of these edges, say here, or up here, or even down there, that's not going to allow that emblem to sit properly, and it could kick out on one side, eventually get water in there and give you some undesired results on it. So that's a clean surface. I will show the old emblem and how it went on, since I went ahead and cleaned it up as well. The backlight, hopefully it'll adjust. There you go. You can see I already got all the 3M tape off of that. Since I was able to get it off in big pieces. Most of it was left on the tailgate itself, but that's the old emblem right there. I'm going to keep that. I'm not going to trim those tabs off in case I ever have to go back and put that on again. I'll have it, but for the time being, it'll just go into the garage with the rest of the memorabilia I have on the wall, and we'll get to putting this new emblem on here soon. So getting into the new emblem here, looking at it, they obviously brought this out the center, and the reason they did is because that gives them the most height on this emblem with this ram head. Unfortunately though, as you can see, the holes aren't going to line up. I hate drilling into anything metal on a car. Sometimes you can't get around it and you have to. Boy, would it be great, since they do have room down in this lower part of the ram head, if they could have snuck that wire out right here. Now, maybe on a different model, it fits and this wire is a perfect match. I don't know, and maybe Reese is just trying to make a catch-all for everybody, putting it dead smack in the center. But I will have to drill into that. When you do, you're going to have to take off your plate on the inside, because you want to make sure you're not going to hit anything. Get all this stuff out of the way here. I apologize, should have had that ready. Here's a thing right here. If you don't have this on your car, or your truck, you need it. You might as well stop this video here and go back and add one of these. This is the DZ soft open on it. You just open it, the thing just slides down, does its magic. I've already opened up the back, and I'm going to get in there and look just to make sure when I go to drill that hole, I'm not going to hit any of these pieces up here. I can see where the hole is down here in the center. I already know that I'm good. I'm not going to hit anything. Now, when you're doing this on your tailgate, this, again, it's just metal. I mean, you know, it's metal. It's just a sheet of metal. When you're in there prying, don't be pushing in on this. When you're drilling, make sure you got a nice, good drill bit. Drill your pilot hole. Get what I call either a step bit or a unibit. That'll give you a nice, flush, round hole without walking on you and wobbling like an auger bit will, because an auger bit's not going to work on this metal very well. But that's going to be something you have to do, is drill that hole, get it sized appropriately. Now, when you drill any hole in any car, the best thing you could do is get some zinc paint to put on that to protect it, so that way it doesn't rust and anything like that. A lot of people won't take that step. They'll just drill a hole. They're going to mount this up because they're going to get impatient. They don't want to take the time. They don't want to wait for allow it to dry. And you know what? You get water in behind there, you got a mess on your hand. This is going to rust out. Anywhere that's not protected, it's going to rust out. So I'm going to mark this up, get the hole drilled for it, and get that emblem put in there, and then start my wiring process. Alright, I apologize. You guys get to see the ugly reflection of all the crap that just keeps piling up in the corner since it's still the end of winter here in Ohio. But I went ahead and marked this up. Now, you're really only worried about the height of this, where it's going to land, because it's going to be dead center where this existing hole is. Whenever I drill, I put a piece of tape over the paint because you don't want it to chip or something like that. Again, you don't want to make this any worse than you have to on yourself. So I'm going to go ahead, get a nice pilot hole drilled in there, and then I'll start with the unibit. Get a nice sharp bit, press in just a little bit, not too hard. Let the drill do its work. Now the pilot hole is drilled. I'm going to switch over to my unibit. And again, you're not going to put a lot of pressure, because again, this will bend in. You just want enough resistance to cause the drill bit to make some contact. This hole here, I'm going to probably go up to maybe about 1/4 of an inch, a little bit bigger, and then I'll go from there and see if that works to get this in place. Now, as you can see, the unibit is really tough to get started, especially if I didn't do that pilot hole. And quite honestly, that pilot hole probably wasn't as big as I should have made it, because that's just kind of a blunt end there, and this is a pretty old bit for me. So it's not the sharpest on the tip. However, once it gets into those cutting blades, you can see it's just going to boom. The first level, boom, into the next, it cuts out, makes a perfect hole past that. I'll pull this off, protected the paint. We'll see if that hole is big enough. If it isn't, I can always step the bit up a little more. But as you can see, that's almost a near perfect hole that we just did that for the drill bit. All right, so you want to dry fit this. My hole was big enough. As you can see, it's a little bit bigger. Now again, I'm only showing this for video, but I will paint that before this ever gets put back together. On the outside, the inside, allow it proper time to dry, and then I'll put the emblem in there. The good thing about going just a little bit bigger than you need for that hole to be, for that wire to go through, is it allows you the ability to shift this thing around to line it up perfectly. Because you're only going to get one shot doing this. Once you pull that 3M tape off there and you put it up to this bed, guess what? It's stuck. You're going to play hell getting it back off, and I guarantee you will bust this in the process, because this is not metal. This is 100% plastic right here. So my hole fits. I did the test on it, made sure that I could move the emblem around a little bit so I could line it up the way I want, and I'm going to fish this wire back out, get it started, and get it in there. May have to open it back up here. Something holding it up on the other side, but we can deal with that and get it through. Wires tend to get stuck a little bit, and we'll get it. All right, so I got this painted up now. It's tricky getting in there, but you just spray the can as best you can. It'll start to spray nothing but air. Spray it up right for a couple seconds, and then go back at it upside down. You'll get it. I got it from both angles here and got it in there. Now, while we have this off, as we're looking at this hole where the tailgate lock assembly is, going straight back and over, there's already a wire coming in through here. Where that is, there's a hole in this tailgate. That's where you're going to fish your cables down through there. Now, what they give you are those cables right there. Now, it does have heat shrink further up. I will heat shrink that. I will not put just a single insulated cable in any vehicle that I do, for the fear of it grounding out or causing issues with that. So I will go ahead and heat shrink that up while I'm waiting for this paint to dry. I mentioned earlier the DZ tailgate shock that can go on there. That's what that is. It is an absolute godsend. I don't know why any truck manufacturer wouldn't put that in. Again, here it is in action. You just pop that bad boy, let it do its thing. So, beautiful thing there. Because your tailgate, just slam it down. I mean, come on, God, it's 2020 for goodness sakes. You can see my paint there. I just painted it. Now, I let it get a little thick to where it started to run, and you just wipe it off there, because again, this is going to be hidden by the emblem. But my goal was I wanted to get as thick around that hole as possible to protect it to where it won't rust. So that's all done. We'll get to heat shrinking those cables, preparing that while that's drying, and start putting the tailgate back together and get to the wiring. Alright, so while I'm waiting for my paint to dry, as I said before, they kind of give you a plastic sleeve about that long right there on this new Emblem. I went ahead and heat shrunk almost all the wire, left a little patch on the end because I'm going to have to be able to manipulate that to get it wired in. But again, I will not leave a single insulated wire just running through a car. Couple reasons. One is electrical fire. This isn't going to be fused because it's going to be just like a light, and I don't want to cause an electrical issue. The other is that there's nothing any more unsightly than 3 colored wires going through your vehicle that aren't taped up, that don't look black, that don't look factory, and that drives the living daylights out of me when I see cars like that, especially with radio installations, adding a light here or there. Just buy you some heat shrink, make it look like it's factory, like it was supposed to be in there. Clean your install up. I did cut the ends off of this because I'm sure they're not going to fit for this where I just plug them in and get that lucky. But I'll probably be soldering these on. And when I do solder them on, again, I solder things on. I use heat shrink. I know that the 4-pin connector, the whatever, 9-pin, 8-pin, whatever the hell it is, coming in, that plugs into a wiring harness. So I will do the soldering on the plug side, not the factory car wiring harness. If at all possible, you never cut into a factory harness on a vehicle. It could cause you grief down the road. So that way, if I ever want to go back and I want to undo all this because maybe this Emblem didn't last as long, I can go back, put it back to factory, replace that if I wanted to, and anybody that owns this car past me will never know that this ever happened because it was done right. So that's what I did, is went ahead and heat shrunk those up, clean them up. We'll get to wiring it in here soon. All right, we're sure almost down to the moment of truth. And when I say that, and the reason I say that is putting this Emblem on, because again, once you take all this 3M tape off of there, or that protective coating that to expose the sticky side, you go to put it in there, you only have one shot. If you're like me, when I do my own work, if I screw up forever and a day, I know that screw up is there. Now, nobody else in the world knows it's there, but every time I look at it, I see the screw up. What you don't want to do is to take that tape off of there and not get this thing centered up to where it's dragging down or doesn't line up perfect the way you want it, because that's just going to drive you nuts down the road. So this is the moment of truth. We're going to get it lined up. I probably won't film that in the event that I screw up. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. You'll see. So we're going to get dry fit it here again, make sure that it fits in there. It looks like it should belong there, centered up. You're going to see what it looks like. There is a little bit of pressure that I have to push up on the top, so I may have made my hole a little low, but nothing that it's not giving me an inch. I mean, it's probably not even a 1/16 of an inch. So again, you could have made that hole a little bit bigger just to give you more room to move that Emblem around. I think that's pretty important. So we're gonna get started here. Alright, so my 3M backing is off. We're gonna line it up to the top because that's where I'm gonna see the most, is the top versus the bottom. You're gonna check this thing, kind of hold it up, make sure there is a groove part on the bottom that it's into, looks straight, looks solid. You don't need to shift it around a little bit, because once you apply that pressure, you're into it. Alright, so let's do a dry run here, give you guys an idea of what that thing's going to look like. I have to admit, chrome doesn't look bad. It looks pretty good here. I'm going to zoom it in. I'll do this both in a lighted condition and a non-lighted condition. Now, I'm only using a 9-volt battery. I'm not sure if anybody's aware, or if everybody's aware. 9 volts close enough to 12 that you can use it to test a lot of car circuits. So this is what it's going to be like when it is in the low light condition. This is the running light. As you can see, it lights up. And then when I hit the brakes, it's going to get a little brighter there. So you can see the iris on the camera adjusting. So that's what it'll look like with a brake. I'll go do the same thing without all these lights on. I'm going to try to move over, hold on to these cables. Hit my light there. Still got a little bit of a light from the garage, but that's the running light when just the parking lights are on, if you want to say. And then when you hit the brakes, it lights up a lot brighter. So kind of hard to tell on the camera, but I would say it's probably at least about twice as bright when that tail light, the brake lights come on. So pretty cool concept, because if this thing lasts, and it is plastic, that's why I'm worried about it. It is plastic, but if it lasts, that's a really, really cool feature to see driving around town. I'm waiting for the lighted emblem up front. That's a little more expensive. That bad boy is like 189 bucks, 216 bucks shipped. But we'll get to wiring this thing in here off of the factory tow hitch wiring harness. So pretty chrome, I like it. Now I'm going to fish this through here, try not to get my dad bod in the way as much as possible. You can see this is all wired up, this is opened up. If you haven't noticed, yes, this is a liner that I put in. I have a video for that. It was a Kevlar version of liner, and I also have the plastic. Now I'm a huge fan of plastic because it really protects your bed a lot better, because if I hit something on this and bend it and ding it up, that's going to show, whereas the plastic's really going to act as a good buffer. So I went ahead and rhino lined that, or lack of a better term, Kevlar Duplicolor is what I used. But the real reason I did it is I have a fifth wheel that goes into this truck, and it is a pull right super slide, and I had to cut some pretty big holes in the bed to accommodate that. And since I went ahead and did a brush-in bed liner, that really protects my vehicle. Plus, I can hide all of that, those holes with this plastic liner in there. So that's why I did that. The other thing is these plastic liners will wear through the factory paint in some cases, or you get sitting water in there that can cause you some grief. That's why, again, I'm a huge fan of just taking the plastic liner out, bed lining it with either a spray or a brush, however you want to put it in, and then put the plastic liner back in there, and you can't go wrong. That bed will last forever on these trucks. So let's get to it. I'm going to wire this and push it down through. Don't have a lot of room here. You're basically going to go one hole over to the left of the truck tailgate here. This may be pretty tricky. My hands are pretty big, and I can tell already that it's not going to be just an easy process to get through here. So guys, you're used to this, stabbing in the dark. Just keep it going forward and see if you can't hit the right hole on the other side here. Don't put in the no hole. You do that, you get in trouble. You know what I mean? So there it is. It's fed through, comes through, got plenty of slack on it. That's through the tailgate. I'm going to go ahead and wrap all this part up, get it back together. When I lift that tailgate up, I'm going to be careful not to pinch this wire by leaving it in like this. I'm going to put it down into this opening, so when I open that tailgate or close that tailgate, it doesn't pinch that cable. Again, just plan stuff out so you don't cause yourself any grief. But it'll go down in here like this and give me a little bit of opening to get to it. Once I get that tailgate in the closed position, then I can pull it through and do my wiring. So as you can see, as I close that tailgate up, I push this through. I stood off to the side over here, but my wire's through. It's going to basically come in right about there. Now I will zip tie this up. Again, you know, not only do I clean it up with heat shrink, soldering connections, all of that, you make sure wires are secure. You don't leave anything flipping around and going through vibrations. When you do, I don't care what insulation you have through, it will wear through that. And when it does, it's going to cause you grief. You're going to be out on the road, your taillights aren't going to work, you're not going to remember why, you don't know if it's the aftermarket taillights you put in, the aftermarket emblem you put in, something that happened to the trailer. Just do shit right. If I see a car, and I did this working on a motorcycle, a kid had a Harley Davidson, he asked me to do some work to it. I saw that he had some stupid ass connector on there that wasn't soldered in, it wasn't heat shrunk, and I just ripped the cable out. Now he got pissed, and I don't even care what was in there, but I said, dude, I'm not working on your bike under these conditions. You either do it right or you do it on your own. So we took the time, I taught him how to solder, wire things up, do things correctly, because again, this is a $50,000 car that I'm still paying on, and you don't want to do things, take shortcuts, or think, oh, I'll just wire tape it up now and I'll get back to it when it warms up. As I say to my boys, you never get around to getting things done later. I said there's always round to it, and you just never get around to it. So we do it right the first time and just knock it out, be done with it, take the time. I know I'm excited to see this thing work. Unfortunately, I won't get to see it work a lot because everybody else will, but do it the right way. Take your time. All right, so we're going mobile now. So I went ahead and pulled this bracket through, this plug. When you go to do that, it sits with the 4-pin on top. So on the inside of the bumper, you have these two bracket pins right here. All you're going to do is you're just going to push those together. Kind of hard to show you with one hand. Push those together. It pops all the way forward. I loosened up these cables and everything that was holding it to the frame of the car so I could bring it through and not be on the ground because it's still pretty cold here. And I could do a real good job soldering this up and connecting into it. Now again, these wires connect to another connector further down into the factory wire harness, the car's wiring harness. So by splicing into this, I'm not causing that much damage if I have to go back and undo it. Now, the person before me had a running light that went underneath here. If anybody's seen those, they half-ass work. They last for about 2 weeks. They look great when they work, but then they kick the bucket and they quit. So I'm going to remove that. They had these Scotch locks on there doing that, but get rid of that shit. So I'm going to go ahead and rewire those up. You can see where he's kind of cut into it, but I'm going to solder that, heat shrink that, make it look the right way, and do it the correct way. So when I showed you the wiring diagram, what's important is remember your 4-pin is on top. There's a little diagram on the front here. But as I did that, you can see the pins on the inside and how those match up to the wires on the back. So that's what I did when I showed you. That was what wires go to where. So you don't have to remove this little gray protective cover here, which isn't a big problem if you want to. It just helps secure the wires in there. Because again, you could be traveling with a very heavy camper and they don't want any of these wires to come out when you're doing that. The other thing they give you is a control module. Had it somewhere. Oh, here it is. So what this is also called an equalizer, a control module. In Dodges, they use a single light in the tail light to provide turning signal and for the brake light. So what happens is both turning signal wires light up with the brake. Then when you turn the left turning signal on, only that wire lights up and vice versa on the right. The problem is to get a dual stage out of this to where I have a running light and then a third brake light the way I want it to function, you have to hook up your left and right turning signal to this side of the equalizer or the control module, and then it will give you a single red plug out. That's why they gave you the little connector there. I'm not a fan of those type of connectors because they just get corroded and do stupid stuff like that. So again, I'm going to cut this off. I will solder it, heat shrink it. None of these bare cables will be showing. This control module will get retaped with the factory tape that went on here, and then taped up pretty solid to where it doesn't give me any fits or gets loose or anything like that, or water in there as well. Now, one thing I had on this car was some reverse lights, because I do a lot of work at night, and those shit the bed on me. They were, you know, they got full of water. I got new ones I'm going to seal up. So when I come off of this, the reverse light and the ground, I will leave an extra thicker cable on there, so that when I go down, you know, in the future, or later down the road, when I go to replace those lights there when it's a little warmer, I'll be able to do that relatively easy, and I won't have to go through and do all this again. So same concept would work if you're using that little strip light that's there, and you can see mine's there. It's a piece of shit. It doesn't work anymore, because LEDs just get burnt out. It looks, you know, shittier than it does when it's not on there. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect those. The cables, you can see them over there. I'm going to disconnect those, cut them off, secure them. I'll probably just leave that in place because you don't even know it's there, or I may remove it at a later time. But the same concept would work. Anything you need to wire to this, whether it be this badge or that strip light that goes down, or if you want to put in some reverse lights here to really light stuff up, that's what you're going to have to do, is to get into this bracket right here, or this plug, to do it. So. Alright guys, so I took a little bit different approach on this, and the reason being is this wiring doesn't give you a lot of play to really get in there and do much. So I did a method that I call skinning the wire back, and I don't know if others call it the same thing, but as you can see, this wire here is what's going to the plug, and then over here is the factory. So it's just, I kept it intact, and what I did is I removed the sheathing and then ended up twisting the new wire around that, so I didn't have to break that cable. It'll keep the integrity a lot better. Now, the problem is I'm left with how I'm going to seal that up. Unfortunately, the only way that I can think of is using tape. If somebody has a better method out there, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to know a better method to do this. Typically, I wouldn't use tape at all because I'm not a fan of it. Now I will get all this sealed up with some good quality tape that will absolutely keep it watertight. When I do use tape, at each end I will put the smallest zip tie I can get just to seal it as best I can, and then this will all get taped up with some really good quality tape to keep it as watertight as possible. Again, if somebody's got a better method to do that, please let me know. Don't call me an idiot, just tell me a better way to do it. I'd appreciate that. But that's how I'm going about doing this. I've almost got it all wired up. Again, I'm going to go on the positive and the negative, leave those cables out so I can put my reverse lights in at a later time that I want to do there, since those kind of shit the bed on me. They're cheap lights from eBay. I'm going to put a little better quality on there this time, so it'll give me a lot more longevity. Alright everyone, so this is what the finished product looks like. Got my gray cover back on to protect those cables. I went ahead and taped everything up. Now these are my extra 2 wires for the backup lights that I'm going to do. Sorry, I was holding it off to the side. But when I pull this harness back through, that'll give me enough room to tape those up to get those out of the way. May even put a wire loom on there. My control module that I had to add to equalize the turn signals to create a brake light is all taped up with that harness that goes up, and here it will get zip tied to an existing factory harness underneath there so it doesn't shake around. But you can see that's a pretty clean install. It looks solid, it's not going anywhere. Really taped up well with some quality tape, and just as a precautionary measure, I went ahead and put zip ties at each end just to zip tie as tight as I can to keep water out of there. I'm going to go ahead and put this thing back in, tape those 2 extra brake light wires up, and just get them out of the way because it's just getting too late tonight, too cold, and my body's starting to hurt from being out here in the garage in the cold. So, but I will have my trusty Emblem going here. Ooh, look at that. I'm a person with a ram head. But I'll get that going here tonight still and start to wrap it up.